Excellencies, dear friends, good morning to all of you. It is my pleasure to welcome you to IPI and the 7th year of the Women, Peace and Leadership Symposium organized in partnership with the Government of Ireland, the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, Our Secure Future, and in collaboration with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Mexico. The symposium is an annual opportunity to discuss the Women, Peace and Security agenda during the high-level week of the opening of the UN General Assembly. And this year's event focuses on implementing the Women, Peace and Security agenda at the national and local levels. We are honored to have a group of highly esteemed speakers with us today, including member state representatives, UN officials, and civil society activists, who each have a unique perspective on how to apply the principles of the WPS agenda in their work. This morning's symposium is a key moment to reflect on the lessons learned related to women, peace and security in preparation for the 25th anniversary of UN Security Council Resolution 1325 taking place next year. Today's conversation will explore how we can ensure the WPS agenda remains central to how the UN and member states apply these lessons, both in national contexts and in ongoing conflicts today. The biographies of this distinguished panel are in your program. I will now turn the floor over to IPI's Vice President and COO, Adam Lupel, to moderate the event. Thank you for being with us today, and I know this will be a fruitful discussion. Adam, the floor is yours.
Excellent. Thank you, Zaid. So wonderful to see everybody out here. It's always a pleasure to have this event. And I just read on X that there's only going to be 9 women speakers at the open debate this week, and so we're really privileged to have this conversation here, because it's really important that these issues are discussed during this week, not just in October or during CSW or not, and IPI is really committed to this agenda. With that, I want to introduce further opening remarks. We are really privileged to have with us His Excellency Michael Martin, Taoiseach and former Taoiseach and Minister of Foreign Affairs and Defense of Ireland. Really thank you so much. Gratitude to Ireland and for your leadership. Please, sir, the floor is yours.
It's great to be back at this symposium on women, peace and security, an issue of great importance to Ireland and central to our global outreach and inputs. And we meet today with a really deep sense of dismay at the horrific violence and conflict which is engulfing our world, from Sudan to Gaza, Lebanon and Ukraine. And yesterday I spoke at an important event that focused on the appalling denial of the fundamental rights of Afghan women and girls under the Taliban regime. It's a sad reality that the denial of fundamental rights and conflict-related sexual violence is a vicious reality for too many women and girls. The promise of the WPS agenda is facing tremendous and deep-rooted challenges. In Ireland, we have witnessed firsthand the transformative impact women have had on the Northern Ireland peace process, both in negotiating the political settlement and continuing the work of peace building today. Indeed, it was the women of Northern Ireland marching on the streets that said we've had enough of losing our loved ones that really proved a catalyst to those in politics to get moving on the peace process. And this experience has informed our engagement on the global stage and driven our promotion and prioritization of women, peace and security agenda. In July, I traveled to Ethiopia and Kenya, where the women, peace and security agenda is front and center in our engagement. Ireland is working closely with government, women's organizations and UN Women to develop Ethiopia's National Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security. At the subnational level, Ireland is promoting women's leadership through our support for the Women's Dialogue Space in the Somali region. Organizations like these are vital for amplifying women's voices and supporting more women's involvement in regional politics. I'm delighted that Saba is here today to speak directly of her experience and knowledge of peace building in Ethiopia. During my trip, I visited a safe house in Addis, where I learned firsthand about their work sheltering and supporting women and girls fleeing violence. And facilities such as these allow survivors to rebuild their lives, their dignity, their self-esteem, and then to move forward to contribute to a new reality where women can live and work in safety. It was a harrowing experience, extraordinary courage of those who have established the safe house, and very simple sort of message to me. These young women come to the shelter having been through enormous violence, no smile, very little communication, but they do leave smiling after a prolonged period. And the shelter works to place them in work and create career pathways. And that gives one hope that the work we are doing has impact and can make a difference. And we cannot, and I would say that we cannot achieve the equal participation of women in decision-making until we address the abhorrent levels of sexual and gender-based violence suffered by women and girls. There's no hope of gender equality where violence is met with impunity. Ireland's third National Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security guides our engagement on WPS. And this plan is a key pillar of our broader commitment to gender equality and has both a domestic and foreign policy focus. For Ireland, the domestic focus is an important one. We cannot support women around the world without action and change at home. Ireland has also supported other countries to develop national action plans on WPS, and we continue to share lessons learned from our own experience. Collaboration with and resources for women's organisations are key to enhancing women's participation in peace processes. This political momentum will only be achieved through targeted support. The WPS agenda is not a uniform one. It must be adapted to the specific challenges that women face in different places and locations. At its core, however, the agenda unites us around one vision: the full, equal and meaningful participation of women in peace processes and an acknowledgement of the quiet peace building so many do within their own communities and broader societies. I look forward to the discussions on lessons learned and unique experiences of turning the Women, Peace and Security agenda into real action. Thank you very much indeed.
Actually, thank you, Minister, for getting us to off to such a great start. It is now my privilege to welcome Her Excellency Olya Stefanishnya, Deputy Prime Minister for European and Euro-Atlantic Integration of Ukraine and Minister of Justice of Ukraine. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, dear friend, and I'm really grateful for International Peace Institute and all of the friends who organized this event today and the platform for a very important discussion. I have only one positive thing to say from my country is that despite the full-scale war, which is lasting for almost 3 years and the 10 years of the aggression of the Russian Federation, we also mark a decade of the most powerful gender mainstreaming in our country. Today, we face definitely the environment where Ukrainian women has been left with zero barriers into access to any kind of professional development, personal development. Every instrument of women empowerment and protecting of women's rights has been almost legally and practically implemented in Ukraine. And also I can feel it on myself as I was one of the first female ministers, and now we have almost half of the government formed in a very gender balanced way. But at the same time, we could also be proud of being the first country in the world to adopt the national action plan for implementation of the UN resolution on women, peace and security security. But unfortunately, this leadership has been marked by necessity to address enormous challenges we faced for the women in war. And with the beginning of full-scale aggression, all these instruments we've applied by implementation of the National Action Plan has become the background of our resilience, the background of our ability to withstand the aggression and to remain a functional country. But at the same time, we have seen a new dimension in the response to the war challenges and the military challenges. This is a sexual-based violence as a targeted and deliberate instrument of war. And here, basically, we were not appealing to the action plan. The first time when Pramila Patten, special representative, came to Ukraine, it was just very recently after the full-scale war started, and it was the first time the whole world has heard that the sexual-based violence is an instrument of war, is the instrument of demoralization of people and of forcing people to obey. This has brought us to discovery of many emotions in that regard and many conclusions. First, the response and the justice we were seeking from international community and international instruments were not relevant. And all those other women's and men and elderly people who didn't receive enough response and justice around many other conflicts around the world, in every part of the world, we felt their pain because we felt that we do not have enough instruments to respond. But that brought us to the other understanding that we can bring the response and justice by ourselves. So we amended the legislation and we have established the interim reparations mechanisms. Of course, this is most underreported crimes, and the crimes nobody would first can go to the law enforcement. So we established the network of the survivor centers around the whole country. And we hope that our resilience, our commitment, and the instruments of justice and response we have suggested to our people, to citizens of Ukraine who became the victims of that crime, they will help to feel justice for those others who might face the same crisis and unfortunately will not. Today we're here with as part of the delegation with the President of Ukraine, and just in a couple of hours we will head over to Washington for a broader discussion on the peace formula and the peace summit. And I think that the responsibility we bear today is not only ending the war and ending massive atrocity, but also living a clear white and black answers to the crimes of aggression. So all those victims of armed conflicts which might occur in the years and decades ahead, they would know that there is a justice, that there is a response, that there is a unity, and there is a way to end the war. This is what we are fighting for. We're fighting for our country, for our freedom, for our survival, but also we are fighting for the future of those who would seek for justice, who would seek for response, and who want to prevent the wars. So thank you so much, and I'm really proud to leave my team for a further discussion, and I'm really grateful for invitation and give us under this platform for ability to present some of the positions on our side. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for those truly stirring words, and also for just really demonstrating that with leadership and political will, progress on WPS can be made even in the most difficult of circumstances. So thank you so much for that. We'll now turn to Her Excellency Lotte Macon, State Secretary for Development Policy and Deputy Minister of Denmark. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, everyone, and certainly very grateful to be here and be able to address you all. It is, as we approach the 25th anniversary of the Resolution 1325, a really good point in time to assess whether we're making progress or not. And While it's true that it has now become a really core part of the Council's work, it's with a strong normative framework. As we've just heard, situation on the ground is lacking so many places around the world. In fact, we are backsliding. Denmark is now taking up our seat in the Council in a few months from now. It is a key priority to us. It's in fact one of our few sort of already set priorities that we will work hard on the WPS agenda. We are in the midst of developing our 5th National Action Plan. We did the first one already in 2005. And here we are aiming to try to bridge from the normative framework to really concrete efforts on the ground, trying to scale up support for locally led women peace-building initiatives and creating a stronger initiative between or connection between local action and global peace-building efforts. We'll do that in areas of the world where we are already very much engaged in the Horn, the Sahel, Afghanistan, but also working with our Ukrainian partners to see exactly what the minister just said, justice and dignity, and a hope for the future for the very, very brave women of Ukraine. We cannot stress, I think, the importance of full, equal and meaningful and safe participation in all levels of decision-making for women, whether political processes, peace-building, mediation or peacekeeping, from the grassroots to the multilateral stage. We need more women participation, otherwise we will simply not have lasting peace and security. We are deeply concerned, Denmark, about the ongoing armed conflicts and the effects on women and girls, especially the sexually related violence. We need more action. We support, therefore, also the Office of the Special Representative on Sexual Violence in Conflict and collaborate closely with UN Women, UNFPA, and other partners to address this issue globally. We have set up a number of funds to help support and defend human rights defenders and women activists. We need more in that space and are happy to work more with colleagues around that. They are incredibly brave women around the world that are stepping out there, taking a lead, but they need our protection. Finally, just to say that the collaboration between the UN, the regional organizations, civil society is very necessary. We have, for that reason, established a WPS Civil Society Forum to ensure accountability towards the civil society of our actions on Resolution 1325. We will continue our work, looking forward to engage with you and many on the panel as we move forward in this work and take up our seat on the 1st of January, and we'll work hard for the next 2 years on this. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you. We're all grateful to have another champion of this agenda on the Security Council. We look forward to it. We'll now turn to Her Excellency Issata Mohoy, Minister of Gender and Children's Affairs of the Republic of Sierra Leone. Please, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. As I bring you greetings from our government, the government of His Excellency the President, we want to say thank you to the organizers for bringing us this far to share our experience. And for me, the WPS agenda, more than any other aspect of multilateral diplomacy, illustrates the importance of peace and development nexus. This is why as a country, we have gone through strides. If you have been following the news, Sierra Leone was known as a country for blood diamonds. Women suffered a lot. Over 55,000 women suffered during the 11 years of war. And today we want to leave that behind us. This is why, as a government, we've tried as much as possible to enact the laws that will promote and protect women or women's empowerment. This is why in 2020, we brought together what we call the Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment Policy. And with that policy, we worked together with civil society organizations and other partners for us to be able to develop the bill of the policy and then enact it into law in 2022. The Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment Act, which has now brought together a huge percentage of women in parliament and also at cabinet level, because the highest percentage we've got in parliament so far before now was 12.3%, and today we're boasting of having 32% of women representation in parliament as a result of that particular law. At cabinet level, we also have seen a great increase in the number of women. This is why I'm even standing here, because my background is a civil society organization. I was in civil society before coming to government last year. So because political parties have to look for women. They have to look for the women so that women's agenda will be discussed. So in cabinet today, we have a 34.5 women representative in cabinet, and the population is also very young at cabinet level. So our government has also looked at looking at other legislations like the Customary Land Rights Act, which also was not there was not the support for women to own property. And when you do not own property, you are not empowered to be able to contest with your fellow men. So it is also a law that was passed in 2022, and we have also the financial inclusion aspect, because we want to see women having access to finances so that they will be able to take decisions at even community level. So the government is making all of the strides, because we have seen that there is war, conflict in every other places in Africa. And today, standing here, I believe the discussion we're going to get here is going to give us concrete steps, because we have been talking a lot, we have been saying a lot, but we need to act. And we have to be intentional when we act. So I believe that with this discourse we're going to get here today, we are going to map a way forward so that by next hunger, when we come, it will be concrete steps, and the data might have changed from the present situation to what we have next year. For me, I look at the WPS agenda as an agenda which is there to promote and protect women. And as a country in Sierra Leone, we have gone through the first and second generation of the Sierra Leone National Action Plans. On the 3rd of October, we'll be launching the 3rd generation of the action plan. So I'm very much excited to inform this House here that we have made strides in terms of trying to work on the agenda. As the WPS agenda clocks 25 years next year, our reflection should be, what have we done? And what lessons have we learned in the past 2 decades? We should be thinking about this and be very much intentional when we promote the women agenda. As we sit here today, I want to, as I look at the faces, a lot of women are here. But in our homes, in our communities, how have we impacted on the lives of other women? Let us look at the community level initiatives that we will work towards to promote women. For me, like countries like Sierra Leone, women in more local or more rural communities are the ones that suffer most. They lack information, they lack the empowerment initiatives. This should be the focus, because some of us are well informed. Women in urban areas more have information, but women in those particular areas, they are women too. And these are the women we should be able to support. These are the women we should be able to bring to the forefront. We're working together with the security sector in our country. So this is why we have also brought in the judiciary, because when you want to change the mindset of people, you have to bring a multi-sectoral approach. And then also you should have a focus, because if the security sector works in terms of protecting the women, what about the judiciary? So this is why our government is ensuring that we work together as a team, bringing the judiciary, because issues of gender-based violence that are not treated seriously are issues that escalate, and also adding the burden to the empowerment of women. For me, I feel that as we are here, we should think seriously and critically. Those countries like Somalia, Chad, and others that are going through conflicts that are so pervasive, we should act as states to be able to support them so that we are able to bring this. We have some initiatives that also we have done in our country. First, we're looking at, in fact, as early as this year, as recent as this year, we have enacted what we call the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act, because this is also one of the things that is also disturbing the growth of women or young girls in our country. So that particular law is bringing stiffer punishments for those families that will send their girl child to get married as early as 10 years, as early as 11. And it may interest you to know that even before now, or even it's the practice in some rural communities, that a woman will be heavily pregnant and a man will just come because he has money and say, oh, that child, if she's a girl, she's going to be my wife. That's how they do it. And when you give birth and the girl is a woman, by the time the girl is 3, 4, 5 years, she'll be initiated into FGM. And then once you are initiated into FGM, then the men begin to watch you and support the family, because this is the way they take to bring in these girls into the matrimonial homes. And by the time you go to the matrimonial home, you have 3, 4, 5 other wives with the same man, a man as twice as the age of your father. What, you did not go there at your own will, you are forced to get married. So it is also critical. So the First Lady of the Republic of Sierra Leone is a very dynamic woman who said this law has to be passed. And what we're doing now is we have reviewed the Child Rights Act of 2007, because it took 17 years for us to realize that there were not many components that support or to protect the children. So we have reviewed this act, and it has been laid for gazetting at the government printing. So by the time we go this October, we're also trying to see how we're going to enact that one to also bring a stiffer punishment. And for rape and others, in 2012, we reviewed the 2009 Act. So by 2019, we needed to look again to see how we're going to protect girls further. So we have managed to set up what we call a special court for sexual offenders in Sierra Leone, which is just a model court to try perpetrators of sexual violence. And we're working strongly to get a list of perpetrators so they will not be employed where there are children and where children are vulnerable as well. So we're working together with the police. And for SGBV, we have established what we call the one-stop centers, where victims can get access to services. So these one-stop centers are positioned within the government hospitals, where we work with medical officers as well, so that they would be able to give services to this. The challenge, however, we do not have many doctors. We also do not have the quality of services, and there are not safe homes. We only have like 2 government safe homes in the country, a country of 8 million people. So women suffer a lot, and then sometimes when these crimes are being committed against them, it becomes difficult for them to go back to their communities. So the stigma, discrimination, all of these are things that we see are a burden on the development of women. So as we sit here today, let us reflect and see how we're going to help to solve these problems. I thank you.
Excellent, thank you. We've really gotten off to a very substantive start. Thank you so much for sharing those national experiences and practical examples of how this agenda really can bring change on the ground in Sierra Leone. It's such an important example of that with concrete intentional steps. I noted that very much. It's really important. Wonderful. We have a great panel now to further discuss this issue. And I'm going to start right out with Her Excellency, the Right Honorable Helen Clark. We're just so privileged to have you back at IPI. I feel she doesn't really need an introduction in this room, but a member of the elders, former Prime Minister of New Zealand, former administrator of the UN Development Program, and co-chair of the WHO Independent Panel for Pandemic Preparedness and Response. We do have questions for each one of our panelists, and we wanted to ask you, as we do approach the 25th anniversary of the resolution 1325, wanted to ask your opinion of how would you assess the progress on the agenda, and how, in your experience of leadership, you, in both national and multilateral context, how have you approached implementing this agenda? Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I am speaking today on behalf of the elders And as I sit here, I reflect on coming to a meeting, I think, in this very room in around 2010, when it was coming up for the 10th anniversary of Security Council Resolution 1325. So I sat here listening and thinking how much has changed. And when I listened to the minister from Sierra Leone, I felt so excited because we didn't hear that 15 years ago, or 14 years ago as it was. So I do feel there's been progress, and that Sierra Leone, as we heard, is building in a gender equality and women's advancement agenda into its national ongoing recovery from very tragic events of the past. But then you pinch yourself a moment and you think, right, so Sierra Leone had horrific experience. It's leading itself out of it. But today, other countries are where Sierra Leone was. And where is the room for the women to be able to be contributing to the peace and security agenda, mired in the middle of conflict right now? So I think that's what we need to focus on. And as the State Secretary for Development Policy from Denmark said, we have a strong normative framework. We've got a great framework, but we just need to see more flesh on the bones with action on the framework. Of course, we have the rollout of many national action plans. Big shout out to Ireland and others who've supported that work and supported the women's organisations to be able to play a very, very good role. And at the other end of the policy space, we've seen success in placing women, peace and security on the Security Council agenda. And again, a shout out to the WPS Shared Commitments Trio initiative from Ireland, Mexico, and Kenya as well. But still, lamentably, the decisions which most affect peace and security are being made primarily and in some contexts absolutely exclusively by men, and often the same men who resorted to violence in initiating the conflict. So we got work to do. The elders, as you would expect, do call for the meaningful participation and inclusion of women in peacemaking and peace-building processes to be regarded as mandatory. Those engaging in political processes seeking to end the conflict, the UN or other international actors, must insist on a meaningful role for women as a prerequisite for support, not a nice to have. And I must say, in brackets, and I'll take off the elder's hat, many of us have been very concerned at the UN interaction with the Taliban, which has not had women at the table as a precondition. I don't think this sends a good signal, and I've heard all the reasons and excuses, but I don't buy it. I just think that the gender apartheid we're seeing in Afghanistan is such a gross and horrific kind that a stand must be made. We also obviously would support calls for greater investment in the essential role for women in peace building, including through an increase of funding to women's organisations working in fragile and conflict-affected states to at least 1% of official development assistance. Secretary-General is to be commended for reporting on this in his annual Women, Peace and Security report, but the level of funding is far off target for that, currently standing at about 0.3%. So work to do. So let me conclude by saying, terrific. IPI is still hosting these meetings, that countries are still, pushing the agenda on the Security Council, but we need more action on the ground to follow the fine plans and to support the women and girls caught up in the horrific circumstances we see in so many states today. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Recognition of progress, but yes, we all agree we've got work to do. Thank you so much. We're going to turn straight now to Saba Medin, Director of the Network of Ethiopian Women's Associations. And we wanted to ask you about civil society. Understand that Ethiopia at the present does not have a national action plan on WPS, but there's the possibility for future development bubbling up. And so we wanted to ask you, what role do you see for civil society in the implementation of the WPS agenda in this context, particularly in the light of recent conflict in the region? Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Yes, Ethiopia doesn't have a national action plan at the moment, and we started to develop in 2017 after conflict started to happen. And during that time, of course, we have now a first draft, but the process has been very slow. We are participating in the technical committee, and we are doing a lot of consultations around the country to develop the national action plan, and that really helped to create awareness by the community, even about WPS. Nobody knows about the resolution, and even civil societies were not very active before the conflicts happened in the country. So I had to say that this was also, even though it was delayed, it's also a good chance that CSOs started to engage in peace building activities. But as civil societies, you know, the conflict, when it erupted, we didn't have those tools, those mechanisms on how to engage, on how to ensure that women are represented, and on how to protect women from gender-based violence that was happening very rampant during the conflict time, especially in the north and other regions. Maybe you have heard about that, but that's when we started to be aware on actions that we need to take, and we mobilized and we started to act. So one of the things we did was to train women from the communities and establish Ethiopian women peace builders, because the conflict was not one or the other. It has different shapes. It was ethnic, it was you know, tribal in some places, and in some areas geographic, political. And then there was a strong and active conflict that was happening between government and one regional group. So we had to have different women from all the countries to come forward and talk about peace equally on the same platform, rather than, you know, taking sides from each other. And it was a very sensitive time at the time. So we brought that women together, we trained them. So more than 100 women were trained from the community, from churches, from others and other civil society groups, community-based organizations. So we train them on peace building, on WPS, on you know, mediation, and different capacities that they need when they go to the grassroots. And following that, we designed a coffee for peace. You know, coffee is a very traditional mechanism. As Ethiopians, we come together whenever there is coffee. So it's a very pacifying process, because we go through all the stages of you know, blending it, making it, you know, cooking it, everything. So that process takes women to sit down at the community level and started to talk about their peace and what they think about the reasons, the conflicts, causes of the conflict. And it really helped them to have their agency in this regard, because nobody has been consulting them. And many women were showing surprise, like, how am I, you know, invited to this kind of agenda? And that's how we started to build those agendas from the grassroots. And we brought it to the parliament, to the Ministry of Women and Social Affairs, and at regional level. Also, we started to do the coffee for peace among neighboring regions, between women groups, and they sit down and they see the problem together. And they have both been affected, whether this region or that region, they have been both affected, and they started to create solidarity through this process, because there was some enmity due to a lot of impact that the war, the conflicts have created on women and on the community. People have really resentments toward these issues. So we managed to create that platform where women come together and sit together and think together about what the conflict is. And they were the victims. They were, you know, major victims of the conflicts that we have seen in the last years. So this is being documented and presented to the government, saying this is how women see the cause of conflict in their region. It's not how we think it. Theirs is different. It has social, economic, many aspects, rather than the basic, the usual narrative of political analysis. They say it's because of young people not, you know, losing their jobs. young people have to have some attention, and that's why they are going more to war. So nobody would give this kind of analysis in terms of the conflict. The other thing we try to do is when the Northern War was finalized through the Pretoria Agreement, women were excluded again, even though women have been a lot victimized through the Northern War. There was no women from both parties to the agreement in Pretoria. Beside the mediator, one woman in the mediation group, there was no women. So 25 women, we organized ourselves, and with the support of an African organization, Accord, they supported us to go to Pretoria immediately. And we sat down, and people from, women from Tigray, from Amhara, from different regions in the conflict also came together. It was a very difficult situation because it was immediately after the war. So there were some consultations we had to do. But after that, we came to agreement, and we come up with a WPS agenda for Ethiopian women. And it was not only excluded for the North, but also for the Oromia, for the other regions as well. And we presented it to the conflicting parties, the TPLF and the federal government of Ethiopia. And we also are engaging in the ongoing processes. Ethiopia is undertaking a national dialogue at the moment. We have a national dialogue commission established, and it has been more than 4 years now that since it's established. We have established a coalition for women voice in the national dialogue, because our voice, our agendas, women's agendas at the community have to come to the platform. And we have done a facilitation in different communities so that we have a women-only consultation, because usually when you have a national dialogue, usually women are excluded, or even if they come, they will not speak because they think that it's the main place to speak on this kind of issues. So it becomes very political and a men-only position. So we're trying to break that and bring women on their own comfortable spaces. Of course, they will still engage in the mainstream agenda collection, but we are having a side women-only consultation. Both political issues as well as their own issues are being presented, and that is documented and given to the National Commission, and we're following that. These agendas will not be excluded at the end of the day when finalized the national dialogue. We're also having transitional justice at the moment. So through the green paper that the government is doing, even though we're still in a conflict, we're doing a transitional justice process now. And when the TJ draft was made, we did our own policy brief after consulting with women in Somali, in Tigray, in Amhara, in Oromia. What is their priority within the transitional justice for reconciliation, as well as for justice, for accountability, for all the violences that happened? What kind of law do we need for conflict-related sexual violence and things like that? So we presented to the Minister of Justice, and we have some of it included in the TJ process. So it's engaging in the ongoing process, like the National Action Plan process, as well as the transitional justice and the national dialogue process, but at the same time also creating our own. You know, we don't have NAP, doesn't mean that we cannot do, because of the absence of the normative framework as a country, we cannot be left out, because processes are anyway going on. Peace process has gone on in Pretoria, and another one has been going on in Tanzania between the Oromia and the government, the federal government. Again, there were no women. So we were trying to do at different layers how women can come to engage both at the grassroots, at the national level, at the peace engagement tables. And I have to stop here, I think. Yeah. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So many important points there, highlighting the importance of civil society, which sometimes, frankly, in this neighborhood, we really do need to echo. And also important points I heard really about the importance of information sharing and capacity building at the grassroots level, providing platforms for women to come together, speak together, and think together. Super important. And I kind of want to institute Coffee for Peace here at IPI. I love that. That's really great. Wonderful. Now we're going to turn over to Sahana. Sahana Dharmapuri is the Vice President of Our Secure Future and Vice President of Pax Sapiens Foundation. We wanted to ask you about how Our Secure Future has recently opened a National Action Plan Academy that is focused on engaging countries and policymakers to develop and implement national action plans. At the same time, your research on financing illustrated there's a major gap, and actually Prime Minister Clark mentioned the gap on funding. Could you tell us more about the tools that you think are important for policymakers to truly put this agenda into practice?
Yes, thank you so much, Adam, and thank you to all the organizers for allowing me to share the stage and share some of our work with you. I want to say from the beginning, Pax Sapiens is actually a private family philanthropy. We were established by billionaire philanthropist Marcel Arsenault and his wife, Cinda Collins Arsenault, who have a deep interest and dedication to creating international peace and security using their own personal resources. So Our Secure Future is one of the programs within this network of philanthropies that is 100% focused on women, peace, and security. And I think you'll see that we take a slightly different tack. We are another civil society actor. I think people should start considering foundations as another actor in civil society that has a great responsibility to contribute to this agenda. I think we all agree that on the objectives of women, peace, and security, but what we've seen is that there is what people are talking about today actually is the how to do it. How do we implement, how do we achieve the goals that we've set out for ourselves? And we established the National Action Plan Academy to really address both the conceptual gap, strategic gaps, and operational issues that we find within institutions. And let me explain that. We believe that we really have an opportunity here with women, peace, and security to increase global peace and security for all. That is actually the primary objective and strategic objective of this initiative. And it's through women, through women's leadership and decision-making roles that, that we could do this together. And we see women, peace, and security as this gender equality accelerator, right? But what we found is in the last 20 years, or so, that there is really a lack of political will within institutions, and there's a lack of institutional capacity to fully implement this agenda. And we think that what we're seeing is this is for two reasons: a lack of understanding by the people who are tasked with actually implementing the agenda, and a lack of an enabling environment, which of course money is a part of, and political will and male leadership is also a part of. So the other thing that we noticed about the delivery of technical assistance to countries on national action plans is usually it's delivered to a country versus taking a regional approach. And so therefore there's little opportunities for countries within regions to actually do ongoing sharing, learning across regions, and identifying regional issues that they could unite around or share best practices or lessons learned around. And when we say this, we're talking about government actors, ministries, actors within ministries of foreign affairs, defense ministries, those who are charged with implementing their national action plan. And that includes how do they include women's contributions within this normative framework that we all agree is quite strong, but it's great on paper, but how do we actually bring it to life? And that's really part of our objective. The other thing I want to point out here is that often we see National Action Plan technical assistance focusing on the NAP itself, the actual document and producing the document, but not on the how do we do this and what is the conceptual basis and strategic basis to create an enabling environment to do it. So how do we create those political allies within institutions? How do we find those champions? How do we find the resources internally? So we find that actually the process of creating, designing, even conversations with across ministries about how to implement the NAP is as important as the document itself, right? So therefore, the NAP Academy is really focused on improving the capacity of government actors to understand women, peace, and security and implement it, particularly with male leaders, and really bringing in the contributions of women's groups to that conversation and shaping that agenda. We take a regional approach, and that means we do direct, targeted regional engagement to and with government actors, obviously bringing in civil society into that conversation. And it really, our academy begins with an in-person, multi-country, multi-stakeholder convening that we support with funding and technical experts. So we are trying to fill a gap. Obviously, we can't fill the whole thing, but we can bring some resources to the table, some technical expertise, but it really depends on partnership, cooperation and partnership with a very strong regional partner, right? And because we can only bring some things to the table, we need to bring the government actors and the political will to the table and the connections in the region. And so we just launched our first National Action Plan Academy in the Caribbean in the spring. Trinidad and Tobago was, they were our hosts, and Sarah Hendricks was there, which is great to see her. And our partner is actually one of the UN Women's Regional Office there. And we also engaged donor countries who are active in the region and tried to bring in whatever their commitments are in their own NAPs into that region to support these activities. Of course, we can only bring together 4 to 5 countries at one time. And the other aspect of this is, as you all know, I'm sure many of you have been to trainings and convenings, and then it's wonderful, and then you go home. So the important aspect that we really are trying to focus on is the follow-up support. And we feel that, you know, our resources are limited, but this is where we could really engage donor countries, and the donor country role in the follow-up support to these activities is so crucial to capture that momentum and really help the institutions internally. I want to just mention a couple of lessons learned really quickly and touch on the financial piece. But one thing that I really want to underscore is the lessons learned in the last 15 to 20 years is that national action plans are an incredibly versatile tool. They're not one and done. They're not one size fits all. They're in constant renegotiation and reprioritizing, right? But it's a tool that also is unique because even with all that variation, they're a tool that can unite countries and regions around the common cause of women's equality and women's rights, and also hold those countries accountable. But here's the thing, it's not just a tool. The National Action Plan is not the goal. The goal is how do we do peace and security better? And just one last point is that I wanted to make is on the funding question, actually, because I can't go into that right now, but we do have a small brief that we reviewed national action plans from 2005 to 2022 and sort of condensed some of our findings here. But what we found is, yes, everyone's right, there's not enough money, but there is money flowing to these activities. The problem is it's not enough and there's no transparency. We cannot track the flow of money. And the documents of the NAPs, what they show is aspirational, what they show is some requirements of donor countries to see a budget and costing, but it's all over the place. Some countries provide budgeting, costing, financing. Some people do estimates, some countries do estimates, but none of that is a guarantee of funding at all. And we also can't track the countries that are funding. Those amounts are hidden. And we can only get that through interviews with individual countries, which we did do. So the last thing I want to say is a recommendation at a strategic level. We need the political will to take action on this. And I would say, although this might seem separate from national action plans, I think what we really need to call for as a community of actors globally is we need to have an SRSG for women, peace, and security that is staffed. There's an office, there's a funding, there's a clear mandate to increase women's participation in peace negotiations and track funding flows to NAPs, both at the international multilateral level, but also localization efforts, right? And I think everyone here would agree we need to talk about money more, and we need to also do more documentation of impact. So I'm sorry I talked so fast. There's just a lot to say, and I'm happy to answer any questions about the Academy afterwards.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Indeed, a lot to say, and you say it well. National action plans is not the goal itself. NAPs are a tool to do peace and security better universally, and real focus on implementation, follow through, and yeah, we need to talk about money, I suppose. And I should say, you know, IPI is a nonprofit, so we really encourage foundations to be engaged in this space. So let's talk later. Wonderful. Now, really happy to turn to UN Women and Sarah Hendricks, Director of Policy, Program, and Intergovernmental Support Division at UN Women. We wanted to ask you, Sarah, and in this, you know, we all recognize this is a very difficult time for multilateralism, for gender equality, and from UN Women's perspective, what does women, peace, and security really look like at the local level, and what recent initiatives from the ground do you think really need to be made more visible? We've heard some really great examples here today, but what needs to be supported by the global actors from the local level?
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to speak about this important aspect of the work of local actors, particularly because this provides a window to what we could achieve if women had decision-making at all levels. There certainly is no shortage of examples of women building peace at the local level, but it is their exclusion from decision-making that actually robs us of that pathway, that most clearest pathway to building a world of peace. I think this has always been the basic argument of 1325. It is a promise, however, that remains unrealized because men still dominate not only the halls of power, but also certainly the councils of war. Here, for example, we speak about conflict prevention a lot of the time, but in actual fact, when you parse that out, we don't fund conflict prevention enough. We don't pay enough attention to conflict prevention, particularly when the world is on fire. For many, many years, UN Women, with the support of the Peace Building Fund, has supported and trained and partnered with and strengthened the incredible and brave and courageous work of women mediators, local women mediators, for example, who have been working in villages right across the country of Burundi to address and resolve local conflicts, to reduce tensions across communities, to address land disputes very, very effectively. And this work started way back in 2015. It has carried on, but then it started in a moment of a very severe and significant political crisis. And it is that work, it was that work of local women mediators who no doubt played an incredible role in bringing back and preventing the worst from happening in terms of a country that was on the brink of yet another civil war. I could continue with many, many different positive examples from across the world. We have taken the time to document the extraordinary work of local women mediators in some of the world's most difficult contexts, whether that is Syria, Iraq, Yemen, Libya. These are women who are largely shut out from the actual political discussions, the table of peace negotiations, yet they have done such tremendous things. They have brokered the release of political prisoners. They have prevented and resolved tribal conflicts. They have even managed to broker cross-line negotiations to really secure resources. Some of you have heard of a quite well-known story of a Yemeni woman from Taiz who managed to get the military to hand over access of 6 out of the 9 water tanks that were being controlled. Now, this was a woman who actually had quite a strong public profile. She was an NGO leader. She was a very well-known humanitarian worker, and that story is one of both bravery but also effectiveness. But I also want to ensure we're paying attention to the many, many women across other countries, for example, in Syria, where women who have been homemakers with absolutely no public profile have played such a tremendously decisive role. A decisive role in ending the siege in several districts because their male relatives, their husbands, their brothers, their sons, their nephews were the ones who were at higher risk of being arrested or killed. Beyond this role in prevention or mediation, let me also speak about accountability. We've seen such tremendous milestones in gender justice in international courts that are extremely important, but so, may I add, is progress at the national level when it comes to accountability for atrocities that are committed against women and girls in conflict-affected countries. And here we see a very effective modality, and that is the modality of mobile courts. For example, in DRC or in South Sudan, which I visited just a few months ago, that results in convictions of cases of gender-based violence in places where no statutory court has heard cases like these for many, many, many years. And it is this type of modality at a local level that has proved to be so effective. In the Congo, this work has resulted in dozens, literally dozens of convictions of members of armed groups and state security forces every year. We've seen, for example, the crime of forced pregnancy was successfully tried by a national court for the first time worldwide just last year. And here I do want to mention as I finish that I could go on with these examples of what has been achieved by local actors. But I think we need to reiterate that the work of the local level is always, always important. But it is all the more important when we see the way in which the international level or the national level is increasingly deadlocked. When we see the increasing political polarization playing out in these realms. UN Women has been supporting the development of local action plans, the localized version of a NAP on women, peace, and security in many, many countries, whether that is Kenya, Nigeria, the Philippines, Somalia, the DRC, Ukraine, many others. And we've helped to ensure that local women's organizations are front and center in that design of what we fondly call LAPs, of local action plans. And so I think that is probably why I will end with reinforcing something that has been a recurrent theme in this conversation, and that is that we need this intentional and focused effort of unlocking financing to diverse local women's organizations. Because of the work that you've heard from Ethiopia has been done and the practical results that have happened, because of the work that local women's organizations play in advancing local action plans on women, peace, and security. But this does require not just more money, it also requires how they are financed and supported to change. This requires greater flexibility. It requires reducing administrative impediments, increasing greater attention to long-term funding, and reducing and changing our own institutional risk policies. I think we've heard, for example, from the State Secretary for Development Policy from Denmark, the attention to women's human rights defenders and the importance of that. And here, as I end on the last International Women's Day, the Women, Peace, and Humanitarian Fund launched something called Invest in Women. This is a global campaign endorsed by the UN Secretary General that aims to mobilize $300 million of new financing by the end of 2025 to support 3,500 local women's organizations that will do this work, do it bravely, do it courageously, and do it with impact. And so that's where I would start, by driving our attention and our resources to support their courage and their work around the world. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you so much for continuing this morning's presentation. So many important examples: prevention, mediation, accountability. This case of the mobile courts I find fascinating. And the point about that the local level becomes so important, or is always so important, especially when the global level is so deadlocked, which is really, I think, an important message for this community, and the need for intentional and focused effort to unlock financing, something that we've been hearing all morning. I realize I've been so taken by this conversation that I've been failing on my time management this morning. But it's been worth it to listen to everyone because it's been so substantive. I already have a list for further interventions from the floor. So we've got some wonderful people in the audience, and we have to invite you up to the podium because of all the security scramblers in the neighborhood. The mobile mics don't work today. So I'm going to invite for a brief comment, 2 minutes or so, His Excellency Mr. Martin Chungung, Secretary General of the Interparliamentary Union. Please, sir, welcome. Happy to have you.
No, thank you very much for inviting me to this event and for giving me this opportunity to say a few words. As I stand here, I was listening to the Ukrainian minister a moment ago, and it took me back to close to 3 years ago in the early days of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. And when the first contacts between the two sides took place with a view to finding a peaceful solution to the crisis, it struck me that at the table, there was no woman. Everybody was male. And yet today, we all recognize that women are indiscriminately affected by conflict. We had ample evidence today of this. And so why were they not present? I think that at the international level, we have the normative framework, but at the national level, we are not walking the talk. And I would like to, coming from a political environment, I would like to offer that we need to muster that political will. We sit in this room today and I look at the participants and they're predominantly female, right? Not enough men are being part of the discussion. Zaid, thank you for making it. And I think that we need that political will. And the initiative like the one He for She, which was celebrating its 10th anniversary yesterday and which I attended, is a very good one for recruiting more male champions to the cause of women, peace and security. That's one thing I would like to point out here. And then we need to tap into the resources of those institutions that have the power to make a difference. And thank you, my dear sister from Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone is very forthcoming. Their parliament is forthcoming in legislating on some of these issues. It is something that we need to do more of. We need to get our parliaments to make laws. We talked about making women's representation in peace processes mandatory. Parliaments have that capacity to do that and legislate. We talked about funding for work in this area. Parliaments have the purse strings. We need to get them. But most importantly, I think parliaments need to exercise their oversight and make sure that what is being articulated at the international level is actually being implemented at the national level by government. So I just wanted to put this on the table to say we have to muster the political support and the resources that are out there at national level if we want to connect the international to the national. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Hashtag He for She, for sure. Now I'd like to invite Her Excellency Arlene Tickner, Ambassador at Large for Gender Issues and Global Feminist Politics from the government of Colombia. Arlene, please.
Thank you. I'm going to be really brief. I have 3 points that I'd like to make after listening to this fascinating session. First, Colombia's own experiences with women, peace and security and with peace building more broadly, I think point to what several of you have already said, the crucial role of women at all levels as peace negotiators, mediators, defenders, and also as everyday carers of life, I'll call it. Safeguarding, strengthening, making these roles more robust is fundamental to building lasting peace. And I just want to point to what Sarah has mentioned about the crucial role at the local level. I think one challenge remains how we scale up these experiences to guarantee that in the decision-making circles where things actually get decided and guarantees and commitments are made, how we go about doing this. So that's one challenge. Second, many have spoken about participation. I think genuine, deep participation of women and girls and other vulnerable social groups. Columbia has emphasized quite a bit LGBTIQ plus persons in the elaboration, execution, follow-up, and accountability of Women, Peace, and Security agenda is both messy and time-consuming, creates inflated problematic expectations when it comes to implementation, but at the same time, it's a sine qua non for meaningful results. And so I couldn't stress this more in the case of our experiences. Third, I was here at an event last year, I think, on patriarchy. I think that the Women, Peace, and Security agenda will be hard-pressed to fully deliver unless the myriad effects of patriarchy are addressed. Among these, I just want to highlight bodily, political, and economic autonomy of women and girls and their diversity. Until we're able to make our own decisions on these issues, fully implementing this agenda and materializing its promise is going to continue to be elusive. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We now next on my list, I have Hirotaka Matsuo, Deputy Director General, Foreign Policy Bureau from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan. Please, sir. Floor.
Yes, good morning, everyone. First, I would like to express my deep appreciation for IPI as well as the Sasakawa Peace Foundation for organizing this event. Last year, our Foreign Minister Yoko Kamikawa attended this meeting, and definitely she really wanted to attend this meeting this year as well, but she had to leave New York yesterday. Under the leadership of Foreign Minister Kamikawa, we are actively promoting WPS domestically and internationally. And we incorporate WPS perspective to the implementation of all foreign policies, especially assistance for Ukraine, Gaza Strip, as well as the African countries on ground. Next year is the 25th anniversary of the adoption of Security Council Resolution 1325. Japan is ready to demonstrate strong leadership to strengthen WPS focal point network and plan to host a major event in Tokyo, February next year. And given this increased number of conflicts as well as natural disasters, definitely we need to redouble our effort to implement and promote WPS agenda. And also one of the objective of our event in February is to accelerate a formulation of national action plan, especially in Asian countries. And Japan is ready to share more responsibility to this end. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for Japan's leadership, and allow me to take a moment actually to thank once again the Sasakawa Peace Foundation of Japan, this is the third year that we've worked with them on this event. We talked earlier about the importance of civil society. We have the Church Center's resident champion here, and so I'd like to invite Kaguya Asoka, Executive Director of the NGO Working Group on Women, Peace, and Security. Please, Kaguya.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much to our hosts and our panelists for their incredible insights. It's an honor to be part of this event. I'm Kaguya Asoka. I represent the NGO Working Group on Women, Peace, and Security, and our work is literally connecting the local to the international by supporting women, civil society from all the conflicts and crises on the Council's agenda, brief policymakers here in New York. So let me jump right in with the couple of minutes that I have. We believe that the Women, Peace, and Security agenda's vision of peace and equality has never been so important or so under threat today. We're confronting record levels of militarization, military spending, armed conflict. We are witnessing assaults on international law, on civil society space, on women human rights defenders. We are witnessing an escalating global backlash against women's human rights as well as LGBTQI people. And the systematic exclusion of women and marginalized groups from international decision-making and peacemaking means that those most adversely affected by conflict are also those whose voices are most marginalized. Yet what we also see is that feminist movements and civil society continue to fight back against misogyny, against patriarchy, against all odds, with few resources or support for a just and more peaceful future. They refuse to accept anything less than their rights, and neither should any of us in this room, the international community, the UN, and the member states here. So I'd like to leave you with a few key messages from the women's civil society that we've been working with over the last few months on what you can do to support them. First of all, ending violence is the most effective means to protect the rights of women and girls in all conflicts and crises. This means a ceasefire in Gaza. This means an end to the conflict in Sudan, which is being fought on the bodies of women and girls. This can be said of every other conflict on the Security Council's agenda. 2, defend women's human rights. This is necessary. This is a necessary condition for peace and security anywhere. This includes defending their reproductive rights. This also means ending impunity for violations of women's rights, as you heard from some of our panelists, including in conflicts such as Myanmar, where rape, sexual violence, and the targeting of women human rights defenders has been systematic by the military. Number 3, insist on women at the table. Women have the right to full and equal representation, and we urge the UN as well as member states to use all their political power, all their resources to ensure that women are full participants in the discussions and decisions that you are making about their futures. As the Taliban erases women, Afghan women day by day, confines them to their homes, even bans them from singing, you all have the power to show that this will not happen under your watch, and that their rights are a red line that will not be crossed. And finally, please support civil society and feminist movements. Support their independence. Please act on their recommendations. Defend them from reprisals and retaliation, and fund them so that they are able to sustain their necessary, indispensable work without which peace is not possible. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Such important key messages from civil society there. We have one more intervention from the floor, and then we're going to move straight to our closing remarks. But first, I'd like to welcome Ms. Belén Martinez Carbonell, Managing Director for Global Affairs at the European Union. Please, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Good morning, and thanks a lot. I'll be very brief, but I thank you for this opportunity to restate the commitment of the European Union to this important topic. And I would like to do that by indicating 3 examples of the way we are working towards this agenda. First, in the negotiations of the Pact for the Future, it has been the EU who has supported most the inclusion of strong women, peace and security language through the whole text. And we do that also through our dialogues with different political, economic, or human rights dialogues with many countries around the world. Secondly, the EU member states, as the Deputy Secretary of Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Denmark indicated, I've taken the lead on this topic in the Security Council. It was Ireland at the time, now it's Malta, and we're very happy to see that Denmark is going to take over this lead, because we believe these should be in the Security Council agenda. Thirdly, and a lot has been said about finance this morning, the EU is a leading donor in financing projects in support for women, peace and security agenda. And I'll give you 2 examples. One of our flagship projects is the EU Human Rights Defenders mechanism that only last year provided 30 million euros in support of human rights defenders, concretely with relocation projects, capacity building, and more than 50% of those that benefited were women. Secondly, a lot has been said about Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, just yesterday, we signed contracts with 3 UN organizations for projects that will benefit women still today in Kabul, where we have a mission that has been led by a woman since shortly after the return of the Taliban, who just returned to Brussels and is being replaced by another strong woman, because I think we need to lead by example on the ground. And a third example, it's the Western Balkans, where we support projects aiming at strengthening capabilities and mainstream agenda into small arms and light weapons programs that used to be such a male kind of type of program. I know all this is like a drop in the ocean, but I think that collectively, all together, we can make a difference for the sake of women, all those resilient women that represent half of the world population. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. It's been such a concrete discussion, so many concrete examples, and thank you for the leadership by leading by example. We're going to now turn straight to our closing remarks with Her Excellency Alicia Buenrostro Masu, Deputy Permanent Representative of Mexico to the United Nations. Welcome back to IPI. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to be here with all of you.
I really feel very honored for having the opportunity to give these final remarks of this very timely, very interesting and valuable symposium on a topic on which my country is investing a lot, connecting the international with the local efforts. That's what we've been doing in the frame and within the frame of the Women, Peace and Security Agenda. I want to share with you that my country, Mexico, is chairing for a second consecutive year the Ibero-American Women Mediator Network. It was launched in 2023, knowing that there was a lack in the Latin American, Ibero-American region, and we launched that, and we are very eager to keep on learning from other leagues that already exist around the world, including and following the steps of our Nordic, Mediterranean, the Commonwealth, African, Arab, and Southern Cone pioneers. This was a natural step, as you can imagine, after presenting it in 2021 in our first national action plan for the implementation of the Security Council Resolution 1325, both promoting the creation of the Ibero-American Network and presenting our national action plan are examples of what we are doing in the international, regional, and national level. But perhaps what is more important for us now, and totally in tune with what has already been discussed this morning, is what we are doing at the local level, which we believe it's very important because that's exactly where you need to start. So based on a principle on which we all here agree, the one that goes, peace does not just mean the absence of conflict. We believe that peace also means searching for well-being by strengthening community ties and social justice. You can imagine in my country, for example, the important role that women can play in terms of simply trying to restore the very broken the very broken thread in terms of social and economic terms. So as I said, for this reason, the Mexican government created the MUCPAS, which is a web of network of women peace builders coordinated by the National Women's Institute in Mujeres. And these, together with the Executive Secretariat of the National Public Security System, it aims at promoting the reconstruction of the very social fabric and the social prevention of violence and crime, and in particular to promote the participation of women in peace-building processes and conflict resolution at the very local level. To date, 1,600 MUCPAS networks have been created with the participation of almost 5,000 women in 107 municipalities in 27 states out of the 32 that my country has, which means that almost 100% of the Mexican territory is covered by local networks of women peace builders with an investment of more than 123 million pesos, which is around 6.5 million US dollars. So through the implementation of MUCPAS, it has been possible to strengthen the capacities of the members of the networks while providing greater social cohesion, interaction, and neighborhood links. MUCPAS has also allowed for the manifestation of women's own initiatives related to their community, to create joint networks with the security forces and local authorities, strengthen the protocols for dealing with violence against women and girls, while improving infrastructure and equipment in the neighborhoods previously identified as vulnerable among others. Therefore, from the Mexican side, this symposium has been of utmost importance. Listening to Dr. Said Al-Hussein and Dr. Adam Lupel on what the IPI is doing to connect the dots, and listening to Sarah Hendricks of UN Women on how the WPS efforts link with the feminist foreign policies has been a great opportunity, as well as learning from other countries' experiences and lessons. Moreover,
Of course, it is always very rich to learn about the work of the civil society and to let them know that the governments need their voices. We need them in every process, in every negotiation process that the United Nations has. That's the way we really move forward. So we need their expertise in topics like the one we have discussed now more than ever. So before ending my remarks, I want to highlight how important it is, as we have reflected together, upon the mainstream gender perspectives in foreign policies. As you know, 18 countries, including Mexico, have adopted a foreign policy explicitly referred as feminist or has advanced instruments for a gender approach in their foreign action. One key aspect of having a real feminist foreign policy is to incorporate at the local level the women, peace, and security agenda. It is not possible to say that a country has a feminist foreign policy if such a nation is not promoting the involvement of women in the prevention of conflict and in peace building and peacekeeping efforts. And that is why the local level is the most important. We can keep on talking about what we should be doing, you know, in the international scenario and so on. But if we haven't worked at the local level, it's not sustainable in the end, the policy as it stands. I do not want to take more of your time, so I will just end by thanking the organizers for taking Mexico into account and giving me the opportunity to address this highly committed audience. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That concludes our program for today, but please stay tuned. IPI is very committed to this agenda with our great team headed by Phoebe Donnelly and Evan Papworth. Out at the back, we've got some great programming coming up in October, so we hope to welcome you back. Please, thank you so much for coming.